Hi there. This is Rebecca with Inner Power Training. Today, I'm going to give you some observations that I've made in my life. I was fortunate to be born way back in 1946, so I've gotten to see the golden age of America, the golden age of aviation, which I was part of. I started flying when I was 20 years old back in 1967, highly motivated to do the job because I had seen these three UFOs up close. Immediately found out about the UFO cover up, immediately found out about the shadow government. All the pilots were telling me all these amazing things that they had learned. Many of them had been World War II pilots. And then, of course, we had the Vietnam pilots come along. They had some pretty amazing stories. The people that I was flying around on my airplanes, many of them were VIPs and CEOs and celebrities. And I just loved getting into conversations with these people to find out what I could find out that they knew that might be of interest. And believe me, there was a lot that was very, very interesting. I remember meeting Dr. Atkins, the diet revolution doctor. That was a little bit after the 60s. And he and I went out to dinner after the flight, and he told me all about how he discovered putting people in this ketosis state would make them lose weight, and he was able to transmit what they needed to do to them in a way that they actually did lose weight. And he didn't have much use for some of the practices in the medical world. Um, he kind of clued me in. I met another man who was working at Stanford University. He was a scientist who helped develop the birth control pill and told me to never take it because they were working on a cure for cancer, he told me, and they stumbled across how if you give estrogen to a female, it'll put her in a menopausal state and not ovulate. So you can use it to not have babies. But he said, we really don't know what it could do to you down the road. So I got that bit of information. I was always wandering around trying to figure out why we're here, what this is all about, because I just think that's an incredibly mystifying thing until you get some glimpses of why we are here and what it is to be human. So I studied the works of many of the teachers that have been mystics. Gurdjieff was one of my first great teachers. I read everything I could find that he had written about and his students. And I learned how to watch my thoughts to become more of an observer and get rid of those highs and lows that we tend to go into when we're just reacting to the outer world. And then a little bit later on, I needed a physical healing of a bad diagnosis. I turned to the teachings of Jesus. Mary Baker Eddy, who founded the Christian Science Church, was able to figure out how Jesus healed. He lived at that level of consciousness called the Christ. And I was able to tap into that and go there when I was given permission by a practitioner. All I needed was someone to say, you can go there, you can do it, and get confirmation that there really was a way to heal ourselves. And there is, but you need to be open-minded. I always go back to that experience with those three UFOs appearing over the Atlantic Ocean and flying over my head in the 60s that opened my thought. Now, there's always this controversy now about whether we have UFOs coming from other planets. Um, we also know that we've probably reverse engineered them. I've met people that have told me about that worked for companies like, McDonnell Douglas was one that supposedly has a space program, and Lockheed Martin. I've met people that have told me things that have convinced me that yes, UFOs really did crash. Yes, they do come from other planets. And yes, we do reverse engineer them. And there's all these secrets. It's just fascinating. But once you understand that you can actually connect to your higher spiritual self, the you that knows everything, you can free yourself from all this stress and anxiety that's being put upon you by the news, the governments, all the crazy programming all over the world. You don't have to be part of that. That's why I became a trainer, teaching people how to shift their consciousness down to that alpha level where you can use your God-given imagination to visualize what you want instead of what you don't want. But you have to remember to do it, and you have to work on it all the time. That's the thing about the human condition. It's kind of lazy, and it gets kind of caught up in these diversions and um, well, I've done it myself. I was married 3 times, and I don't regret that. I learned a hell of a lot from being married 3 times. They each had something very interesting to contribute to my information, but they didn't want to be married after a while because I'm kind of 5D and they were more into the 3D. And if you're a 5D person and you're trying to be married to um with those 3D people, you kind of aggravate them after a while. They don't like you. And you're constantly trying to help like their children how to figure things out, and they just don't want to hear it. So that can be difficult. Maybe that's why your marriage is in trouble. But people have come to my seminars and started visualizing good things happening in their relationships, and they were able to transcend the problems and make things work out, which is better than parting company sometimes. But, if you're a curious person and you want to know the secrets to why we're here and what this is all about, you really need to read the books. You need to dig in. You need guides. You need coaches. You need spiritual teachers that can show you the way. All the wisdom is truly within you, but the trick is, how do you unlock it? How do you open it up so that you are a multidimensional person? You just might need a guide. And go to my course, The Mega Manifestation Method, which you'll find on my website, rebeccatripp.com. And I will give you a session and we will get you unstuck or point you in the right direction. And you really need in these times to find these support systems and these answers to the big questions that we all face in life. Why are we here? What is this all about? And what can the masters tell us that will free us from anxiety, stress, and all those negative emotions that we just don't want to have to be part of our lives anymore because they're very destructive.